All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Tara Alcala, and I'm the Night Vision Finance Workstream Lead. Before we get into it, I wanted to go ahead and make a few key introductions. First, I'd like to introduce Mike Stein. You'll see him on the screen. He's our Night Vision Finance Accounting FDM lead, and he's been leading this FDM effort in collaboration with the Night Vision team and all of our stakeholders. We also have lots of others from Night Vision team, from Accenture here with us today for support. I want to specifically introduce Lee Lovelady. She's our Accenture partner for the accounting, FDM, and budget areas of Workday. And Lee's been guiding us throughout the FDM development process. And then a final note before we move along, that this meeting will be recorded. It's going to be used as a webinar of sorts, a tool for all to reference going forward. This is good foundational information, even though our FDM is going to evolve over our design work. This is good foundational information that'll be good for everyone to refer back to later on. Therefore, Mike and I are just going to go through the presentation, and we will hold our questions and to have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. But in the meantime, as we're doing the presentation, if you have a burning question, feel free to add it to chat. And we'll do our best to respond during the presentation or certainly at the end of the Q&A. All right, let's get started. So we're going to be going over our, we just did introductions. We're going to go over the FDM Forum Objectives. We're going to define our segments, talk about the functionality of using Worktags and how the FDM works. All that we're going to share is going to be solidified with the demonstration that Mike's going to do within Workday. Then talk about next steps before we get to a Q&A session. Next slide. Thank you. So the objectives of the forum today, why are we here? First and foremost, we're here to educate those that the Night Vision team will be working closely with to finalize their units mapping from the PeopleSoft chart of accounts to Workday's FDM, and then to confirm that the FDM work tag values. Also, I've invited those that are members of other key groups like our Night Vision executive leadership to provide context to what the Workday FDM is as they begin to look at design, functionality, help make decisions on business processes, etc. And I want to say really clearly, this is not a formal training. That will come later on. This is an informational session to give you some context as what the FDM is, the model we have now. This is an iterative process. The value setting, the need for more work tags may be uncovered as we continue the design, but we will have more formal training later on. This is just an informational section or session, excuse me. So what is the FDM? Lots of new vocabulary. As you've already learned, we're talking about FDM. That's the foundation data model. I've mentioned work tags. We're going to talk about a little of those terms before we get started. So when Mike gets into the details, that'll make a little bit more sense. So to break it down, the Workday FDM is the foundation. It's the backbone of our structure in Workday. It's the framework for our transactions and our reporting. It's inclusive of our organization structure, its various attributes, and our GL accounts. It's multidimensional. That word gets thrown around a lot, but I want to make sure we understand what that means. In other words, users can select combinations of work tags, otherwise we might refer to those as attributes, to get the data they need. That in of itself, the fact that it's multidimensional, is the key difference between our PeopleSoft chart of accounts today that we use and the new Workday FDM we'll be using tomorrow. So today, our PeopleSoft chart of accounts have logic built into it. We have departments and projects, and certain digits of those department and project numbers mean something. So for any one of us to understand or get the data we need, a lot of times we have to break down that logic. We have to pull out data from that information in PeopleSoft. We have to combine it with data on spreadsheets. It's not even in PeopleSoft. We have to combine it with information in external systems, those that don't use PeopleSoft, to get the reports and information we need to do our various analysis. That will be rectified when we move into Workday. Workday, this FDM is not in of itself going to solve all of our problems, but it's a big step forward. I just want to make sure that everyone understands what we do today and the way that we have our chart structure is going to be vastly different tomorrow. And that multidimensional aspect of the FDM is really the key difference between what we do today and what we'll be doing when we go live in Workday. And then finally, the most important point is that we're going to have one FDM for all of UCF and our DSOs. That's really big. Right now, everyone in PeopleSoft uses a chart of accounts. Some of our DSOs have a separate chart of accounts, even though they're using PeopleSoft. And then we have DSOs and outside systems with their own chart of accounts. It makes it very hard to get a holistic view of what the university and all of our related companies, how we're all doing. So this one FDM using one system is just really big within of itself, one of the biggest changes, and we're going to get our biggest bang from our buck by just having Workday and all of us being in one system. Next slide. So what are Worktags? Worktags are similar to attributes in PeopleSoft today. Instead of entering an accounting code string like we do today in PeopleSoft, users are going to choose Worktags to describe a transaction's business purpose. Some of these Worktags are required and stamped on transactions, and some are optional. Mike's going to go into more detail about which one of these Worktags as part of our FDM are required and which of those are optional and why we have these optional Worktags. And then again, multiple Worktags are combined to accurately categorize transactions, back to that multi-dimensional aspect of the FDM that I was speaking about earlier. So the FDM core team has been working with Accenture to develop this model since the beginning of the year. The finance teams led the design, but it has certainly been a cross-functional effort. We didn't start from scratch on this model. It started with Workday standards, taking into consideration best practices for higher ed institutions provided by Accenture, and a lot of work we did learning from what our peer institutions have done. And it's been informed by the needs and requirements identified with our ERP pre-launch work, and then also all the work that was done a few years ago on our chart of account redesign effort. The model we have now is stable, and the focus we're moving to is now on mapping and value setting. This is where you all come in. We as an FDM team have taken the first pass of the value setting and mapping for the university. Our DSOs have taken a first pass of the mapping for all of their organizations. Now we need your help to refine the mapping and to identify any other values needed for your business and your units. And this value setting and mapping is an iterative process. It'll be a heavy lift at first, but we'll continue to evolve as our Workday and our end-to-end business process are further designed. So now the fun stuff, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to get into more details and then provide a demo.
Thank you, Tara. Next slide, please. So first, I'll reintroduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Stein, and I'm Night Vision's Accounting and Foundation Data Model Functional Lead. Today, I'll be going over some important definitions and information, followed by a demonstration in our Workday tenant. So this slide shows the FDM segments our team identified and defined. It's a nice infographic which shows each work tag and some relevant information. First, we have our required segments: company, division, cost center, fund, program, and financial site. Required work tags are stamped on all transactions. Next, our conditionally required segments of project, grant, gift, and designation. These work tags will only be used if applicable. And then finally, our optional segments, financial initiative and activity. These are work tags a user can tack on to a transaction in order to better report and budget. There are also other relevant work tags to help classify transactions for financial, operating, and external reporting, including spend category, revenue category, and location. Now, this is all new terminology, and it's a lot to take in. Even the term work tag is new, and it will take a while to grasp. As we move over to Workday, we'll need to condition ourselves to use this new terminology and remember these segments. Later in the presentation, I'll show how these work tags interact with one another by presenting a demonstration in our Workday tenant. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to go over some information about our required segments. First, let's discuss company, division, and cost center. In Workday, company is a separate legal entity with unique tax ID. This includes the university, its blended component units, and its direct support organizations. Company is the primary segment used in Workday financials. All financial transactions are processed and balanced at the company level. Division represents the sectors of UCF's business and are sometimes more detailed than our divisions of today. Divisions is also a balancing segment, meaning you can produce a balance sheet and income statement on the division work tag. We carefully considered which areas of the university require standalone financial statements when building out our division values. Cost center represents the lowest level academic or operating unit responsible for or affected by a transaction. Keep in mind, cost centers are not the same as supervisory organizations. Instead, a cost center is similar to how we define our PeopleSoft departments today. A cost center generally has an ongoing business purpose within the institution, has an established budget, has positioned employees, and occupies space. The model we've created will result in a much smaller volume of Workday cost centers compared to our PeopleSoft departments of today. This slide shows the relationship between these three segments. As an example here, under the company, University of Central Florida, we will have divisions such as the College of Optics and Photonics, and under the division of the College of Optics and Photonics, we will have cost centers such as College Administration, Research Operations, and the Florida Photonics Center of Excellence. Next slide, please. Our other three required segments are fund, program, and financial site. Fund is used to track a larger bucket of money, and it's another fully balancing segment of the FDM. Funds should define the level which a company or cost center must track a full balance sheet. We will have different fund types in order to classify net assets for external reporting. Program designates the purpose of a transaction and aligns with our Board of Governors EP codes. This segment will support compliance with federal cost principles and financial statement footnotes. Financial site is a high-level location which will include our campus locations, such as the main campus, downtown campus, or even the Arecibo Observatory. The graphic on this slide shows our required work tags and how they come together. Think of our segments like a slot machine. There are many values to choose from, but the model creates flexibility by utilizing combinations of work tag values. This gives our end users the ability to report on any or multiple dimensions. Now you're probably thinking in PeopleSoft, values like EP codes have always been behind the scenes. So what do we expect of our end users? Do they need to learn every single program value? Next slide. That's where driver work tags come in. So driver work tags will populate other work tags when keyed. We've already talked about cost center, now let's discuss the rest. Gift is money received by the foundation or research foundation. Each gift in Workday is funded by one or more contributions, and each contribution is tied to a donor. This segment has its own distinct functionality in Workday. It is optional, but required as the driver work tag in gift-related funds. Next up is grant. In PeopleSoft, grants are set up as projects. Without getting into too much detail surrounding grants, I'll just say in Workday, grants are associated with sponsored funding and an award. Grants also has its own distinct functionality in Workday. In Workday, project is a separate segment used to support the identification of transactions associated with either capital projects or internally funded projects and activities. For example, we will have capital projects, IT projects, or even research foundations, licenses, and incubator programs. Projects have specific begin and end dates that may cross fiscal years. In fact, projects can be broken down into tasks and phases to measure financial performance and completion. Projects also has its own distinct functionality in Workday. Lastly, designation is a custom segment we've created to capture smaller buckets of money. For example, faculty accounts for balance or overhead will become designations in Workday. We've also identified designation as a segment to track material and supply fees, along with various faculty awards. Next slide, please. So now let's discuss what happens when a user selects a driver work tag. If the user selects a grant, Workday will populate a default division, cost center, fund, program, and financial site. If the user selects a project, Workday will populate a default division, cost center, fund, program, and financial site. You'll hear that combination of required work tags over and over when leveraging driver work tags, which is also a great way to learn and remember our new FDM segments. Cost center is also a driver. If the user selects cost center, Workday will populate a default division, fund, program, and financial site. On the right of this slide, you'll see a sample designation and its related work tags. When the user selects Professor Martin's overhead designation, Workday populates financial affairs as the default division, finance research as the default cost center, individual or project research as the default program, sponsored programs designated overhead as the default fund, and the main campus financial site. You might also notice some of the segment values such as D450 and PG22. This should give you a glimpse into what the values look like for each work tag. Next slide, please. So now let's take a further look at some of our Workday values. For company, there is a distinct company ID. So for example, Limitless Solutions, one of our university's direct support organizations, will use LSI. A user can simply key in LSI instead of choosing Limitless Solutions from our company pick list. Divisions will start with D and have 3 numbers as a value. They are smart numbered. Divisions in the 100 series belong to the hierarchy for the President's Division, while divisions in the 200 series belong to the hierarchy for academic affairs. In Workday, we'll use hierarchies to group a set of values in order to report those values collectively. Cost center, on the other hand, is not smart numbered. Cost centers will start with CC, followed by 5 digits. New cost centers will follow the next sequence. Don't worry, if we reach 100,000 cost centers, Workday will accommodate by adding a 6th digit to the sequence. The values you see here are a very small sample of the total population of values the FDM team has identified. Next slide, please. So now let's discuss our optional work tags. Here you can see a small set of financial initiatives and activities. Financial initiatives are formal or informal interdepartmental initiatives. For example, if one of our academic units wants to report on an initiative like NIST compliance or undergrad research, they can leverage this financial initiative work tag. By stamping transactions with a financial initiative, you can report collectively and as necessary. Financial initiatives will maintain a fund balance. Activities are similar, but more for a specific departmental purpose. For example, if you want to report on a campaign like United Way or an event like Family Weekend, you'll leverage the activity work tag. Similar to financial initiative, you can report on the activity work tag collectively and as necessary. Activities will not maintain a fund balance. We're hopeful our divisions will be very excited about financial initiative and activity as they use these work tags to meet our various reporting needs across the entire university. Next slide, please. So this graphic shows a nice matrix of the work tags we discussed and where they'll be used. And you can see again our driver work tags of cost center, gift, grant, project, and designation. And you can see the work tags required, let's say on spend transactions, such as expense reports, requisitions, or supplier invoices. And those are division, cost center, fund, program, and financial site. And by now, I bet you're already starting to remember our required work tags. So now for the exciting part, I think we should go through our demo in the Workday tenant and see how it all comes together. I will share my screen. So you should be able to see our Workday tenant, and this is the face of what the tenant will look like. So first, what I'd like to do is go ahead and create an expense report. So I'll type in create expense report, and I'll go to the task to create an expense report. And so this is what the face of creating an expense report in Workday will look like. And right now it has some conversion values populated. I'm going to get rid of those. And so let's see what happens when I enter a cost center. So I'm going to go to active cost centers. And I'm just going to scroll down and randomly select a cost center. And so the cost center I chose was the Office of Experiential Learning, Academic-Based Aid. And you'll see it defaulted in a division, which is Student Learning and Academic Success. It defaulted in a fund for Student Financial Aid Fee. It defaulted in a site for the main campus. And it defaulted in a program code for academic-based financial and educational aid. And so we can actually tack on some of our optional work tags as well. So if I click in this white area over here under additional work tags, let's see what happens if I go to financial initiative. So we have our list of financial initiatives, and I can scroll down and I can select a financial initiative from the list. So let's select UCF Online Graduate. So you'll see that it populated the financial initiative for UC Online Graduate, but it didn't change any of the other work tags that I've already input. So we still have the same cost center, the same division, the same fund, financial site, and program code. So let's see what happens if I clear the work tags. And let's try entering in one of our optional work tags. So I'm going to key in a grant. So I'm going to type in GR 100 980. And you'll notice it's a little bit different when I type it in. I'm going to hit enter, and it automatically finds the grant that I was looking for and populates the values. So this grant happens to be for CARES Act stabilization funds. And you'll notice that we've actually considered some of our legacy information there as well in the name. So it defaulted in our division of WUCF FM, our cost center of WUCF FM broadcasting, a fund for sponsored programs private, the main campus financial site, and then public services as the program. The defaults are always based on the last driver work tag selected. So let's see what happens if I change the cost center, since cost center is also a driver. So if I change the cost center, I'll go to my list of academic cost centers, active cost centers, and I'll just select the very first one there. You'll see it changed some of my default work tags. So it changed the division to the College of Engineering and Computer Science, since this particular cost center was for academic affairs for the College of Engineering and Computer Science. It changed the fund to E&G General Revenue. It's still within the main financial site. It kept the grant because we had already keyed in the grant from before, and it changed the program to General Academic Instruction. And finally, let's tack on another optional work tag. So we can go ahead and choose an activity from the list. And we've accumulated lots of activities. So maybe we want to put in supplemental payments. And you'll notice it puts in our activity as supplemental payments, and it didn't change any of the default work tags that we've already entered, including the driver work tags of grant and cost center. So thanks to driver work tags and defaults, I think our users will have a much easier experience in Workday. And we've also considered the fact that certain combinations of work tags won't make sense together. So we'll be using custom validations to require or prevent segment population and allow or disallow specific values based on selected values. We do expect our users to know which cost center they are working out of and which fund they are using. So this concludes the demo. So let's talk about our next steps. So for next steps, our team is working on value setting and mapping. We've already scheduled working sessions with our key stakeholders to review FDM mapping. This includes the university and our direct support organizations. Finally, it's important to keep in mind, like Tara said, this is an iterative process. The model we presented today has already gone through several iterations over the last couple of months. And while the model itself is stable, we do expect to see changes to our FDM values. Next slide, please. So here are some resources related to this afternoon's presentation. For further information specific to the FDM, please check out our FDM website. It'll have a recording of this presentation and a deliverable PDF of the FDM segments defined. I also want to point out the Night Vision website has a glossary that's full of useful definitions, and we're going to keep adding to that glossary throughout our Workday implementation. If you have any questions, you can, of course, feel free to reach out to me at mike.stein@ucf.edu. And please make sure to keep checking the website regularly for more information and additional updates.